All right. So, John and Sherry, please tell my viewers why they might enjoy your film, the Mugai.
It's. I mean, it's a horror, but in a lot of ways, I like to call it it's a terror, because it's about the terror that you feel that you're going through before the event, like horror sometimes being after the event, and it's taut, it's tight, it's tense, and I don't know, you may or may not get tucked in at the end.
Good.
Okay. And I think to tell people about the Australia factor here. Is it like a particularly scary place, or can it be scary?
Australia's terrifying. um, I mean, in many aspects. Look, Australia is probably it's terrifying for Aboriginal people. That's a fact. It is quite a complicated relationship as an Indigenous person to come from your land and love your country and love your, the soil and the like. But it's also terrifying in a tourist aspect, just because snakes and spiders and all of those things that exist in Australia. But it's yeah, I think it's like kind of got quite a few approaches to being a terrifying country.
It is
Oh,
scary. It's not just the wildlife. Like I think it's also got an maybe a similar quality to Alaska. Like in that large portions of it are pretty empty, and
Yeah,
you go there, there's no help coming for you, and maybe some of the people who live in those areas know that.
100%.
oh yeah, I'm in Canada, so that's definitely the case here too.
Oh, there you
Yeah,
go. Yeah,
true. There you
Canada. Exactly.
go.
It's unsettling.
Yeah,
Feel
Deep unsettling.
Yeah, you just feel exposed, and what the heck can you do?
yeah. You
Yeah,
feel
there's no.
tiny.
That's right.
All
You
right.
go.
So I felt like you were talking about how it's a terror, not a horror. I felt like it was just like a very good movie that happened to be a horror movie. Does that make sense? Like if you
Yes.
took out the horror elements, it could still work in another genre. Was that intentional?
Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that for sure. Like, but a lot of, you know, some of the inspirations were sort of horror films like Rosemary's Baby or The Shining or Nightmare on Elm Street, those kinds of films. But the directors that I was taking inspiration from was like Spielberg, David Fincher, James Cameron, who are, those kinds of filmmakers who certainly they have very popular films, but they make films that have, horror infused moments in them.
Mm.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's just about good storytelling and an emotional core. Let's talk about the main
Yeah.
character here. Why do you think people will gravitate towards her?
I think a lot of I know, speaking personally as a woman, obviously, first and foremost as an Indigenous woman in Australia, the films resonate so much with our community. But then aside from that, it's women and the I guess the constant feeling of not being believed, not being taken seriously, how quickly the threat of an invasion on your body or your space or your family is how real that is for so many women. So I think I think people that are just trying to live their ambitious lives and trauma and strife happens to them, will identify with it. Like we're all just Sarah's just trying to create a really happy home and give her children the best life that she can give them and create a happy home with her husband, and then she's terrorized by this terrifying creature. So I think anyone who's just trying to do their thing, stay on their aspirational path and get sidelined by something traumatic will absolutely identify with it, no matter whether they're male or female or non-binary, whichever. Yeah, I think people who are, mothers and daughters, people who have fraught relationships with their mothers for whatever reason will identify with it in that way. People who feel disconnected from their family or their culture it will resonate with them. Yeah, there's many sort of aspects, I think, to Sarah that people can find themselves within.
Nice. And let's talk about the malevolent presence. What does it all mean here?
I mean, like, it is sort of, there's an overarching presence that rules all of our lives in one way or another. And it certainly feels like in the most modern iteration of it, I don't know, like inflation and climate and all of these kinds of things all impact on us. But there's also in the film especially, there's just the threat of someone coming and taking your child that kind of lives with all of us as parents, um, uh, or even just as siblings, when you've got to watch your kids, your siblings or something, the other kids. Certainly, that happens a lot in Aboriginal families where there's usually a lot of kids around, and it's like, oh, I'll keep an eye on that on the rest of them, and there's responsibility on them. So there's sort of like this overarching feeling running through someone's whole life in a way. It kind of gets to that, but specifically it gets to the government taking children.
Mm.
Okay. So that's the thing. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Oh, okay, yep. Well, there's a history of terrible history in Australia of the government with the White Australia policy trying to literally colour correct Aboriginal people and basically erase Aboriginality. But culture isn't colour, and as much as culture still exists, that's always going to have an impact. That was a period that went from like 1910 to 1972, I think, and really, it's genocide. It's really genocide. Like it's the literal definition of genocide, and we're just trying to use that in a metaphor in this film.
Mm.
What do you call this? A folk horror, or what do you think of that term?
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely a folk horror. Yeah, that's spot on. I haven't heard that before, but that really fits, and I'm probably going to use that. But I'll credit you. No, that's exactly what it is, man. And that's where most horror stories and the scariest kinds of
Yeah.
legends and stuff comes from. People's real fears.
Okay, great. I'm glad I could turn you on to folk horror. It's a great genre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And were there any other folk horror movies that you think might have influenced you, like The Wicker Man or something like that, or Witchfinders General,
Oh,
or things in the Australian context?
um, uh, there is there was kind of a film that I drew some inspiration from, which is a film by an Aboriginal filmmaker called Tracy Moffat, and it's an anthology that she made called Bedevil. She made it in like '93, I think.
Mm.
And I was trying to, even though she shot most of that on a soundstage, I think, I was trying to pull some of that feel from that, um,
Mm.
and just to get the presence that you were talking about, try and get that presence in there. But I guess most of that presence comes from Shari's acting, basically. But the Wicker Man, yeah. Look, in those kinds of, I suppose, Midsummer, all those sorts of films, there's always, you always feel like something's off. I guess Rosemary's Baby was an inspiration in that sense.
Mm.
Oh yeah, I totally believe it. So both of you have to answer this. What is your favorite horror movie of all time, or of just what's in your head right now?
I really love Signs. It's one of those
Yeah.
like, is it, like people, is it horror in the way that everybody expects? But I just think that's what I love about it, is that it's got some really, really scary moments, but ultimately it's about family. It's like the Signs and The Conjuring are two of my favorite films, and they're really just both about family. But they happen to be horror films. So yeah, that would be mine.
I'm probably going to say The Mist. Um, I do think. I mean, that ending is just so hectic. But even in the novel, Like he's just sort of saying, "Oh, there's 6 of us, and I've got 5 bullets left." And you make the leap, like the Stephen King, the truths that come through his stuff. And everybody's fine when the lights are on. As soon as you turn the lights off and people get hungry in the darkness, they will eat each other. That scares the bejesus out of me.
All right. And how will you encapsulate your experience on the shoot?
Not grueling, but hard yakka. Oh, not hard yakka.
Yeah.
Hard work. Full on is what I'm trying to get to. I think, like just in terms of, I was sort of super focused on the details. So I was just trying to get each, the reactions that I was after, but also get the feel. I was aware that we were kind of, we're not totally breaking new ground, but we're coming out into a place that Australian films don't usually go. Trying to blend these two things, and the weight of times was a bit heavy. I don't know if we achieved it. I don't know if we'll know until 20 years and we look back and go, or yay. I don't know. I don't know which one.
Yeah, I think I would describe it as taut, and like incessantly taut. It was just I've said a couple of times, like I've used this to describe before, like it was like, a steel cable tie just being wound tighter and tighter, or not much slack ever. But in that there was actually weirdly a sense of kind of routine and discipline that I was able to sit in and not there was like a freedom or a liberation in just being able to sit in this psychological place that felt so like so rigid in a way, or tense, and all of those words, but it also then actually was a blessing. I didn't have to kind of jump too much all over the shop. It was just kind of really a question of how tight this cable was being wound every day for 6 weeks. It was hard.
I bet it was. Is there a lesson or moral of this story, do you think? If you had to, once again, sort of encapsulate it, discern it down to just one point?
I guess just be true to thine own self. Like be true to who you are. Like, Shari, Sarah goes on a journey to discover that, but finds the truth at the end, and that's really where it's all heading. In a way, the Moogai is not even bad. It's just an agent of change, an agent of her change.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time. Would both of you like to continue making horror movies in the future?
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
I love it. I love
fun.
it. All right. Well, thank you so much. Have a good one, huh?
Thank you, Michael. You too.